Welcome back to another episode of PSKorner, where we explore the evolving role of private security both locally and globally. On this episode of PSKorner, we have a very special guest, Rear Admiral Leye Jaiyeola. But before then, I would like to take you back to our last episode. Our previous episode, we enjoyed the presence of Temilola Oyinloye, and she gave her perspective on crisis, risk management, and the likes. It was such an endearing session. But today again, I'm with Leye Jaiyeola. I first met him in a conference, and I remember vividly during that conference, he looked at the post which has private security, and the look on his eyes gave me a lot of concern. We had a brief chat, but today we're still going to explore on that perspective. But right now, we're going to dive into the session. Rear Admiral, sir, you're welcome to PSKorner.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege for me.
Let's even begin with how you got into the Navy. What prompted you to take that path in life?
That's a long story, but I'll try to make it short. I grew up in the barrack, so I normally refer to myself as a barrack boy. And I grew up watching young cadets from the military academy, NDA, within my neighborhood. I see them on green, on white, smart and sparkling, and of course, you see them marching and doing so many things. And from there, I just felt that, look, I want to be something like this. But actually, it didn't really dawn on me until after I finished my A levels. And of course, I got an admission to IFE to go and read electrical electronics.
Oh,
And during that period, I saw some young cadet officers moving around. So I approached one of them that, what does it take to be part of you? And he said, look, just take the form, come over, and you'll be part of us. And you know the catching point? He said, and in addition, we feed you free, we pay you salary. And you can imagine a young guy. That was the attracting point. You mean from my A levels, I'll get into academy and eat free food, I get salary, I just jumped at it. But that without telling my parents, of course, and that's for another day. It was after 6 months they realized that their young man, has now become another person. But looking back, I think if I have an opportunity to do it again, I will follow the same path. Because for me, the military, especially the Navy, has been an adventure. I love the sea and I love being at sea. So I feel uncomfortable now that I'm not at sea.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned electrical and electronics. That was my first study. And would like to also, explore further, looking back across your career. And I know that you retired now, but in essence, what has changed most in how you understand security?
Well, a lot is changed. But the first thing I will say is that the security landscape itself has changed. A lot is changed within in those days, the focus has always been on conventional, but now you have an hybrid warfare where you have conventional, guerrilla, insurgency, all mixed together. And so the landscape is changed. You have areas that were seemingly peaceful are no longer at peace. Who would have ever imagined what is taking place in the Middle East will be the issue? Nobody will ever imagine that. And coming home, in those days, you would never imagine a Nigerian can be a suicide bomber. But now it's given that because of changing environment, a lot is happening that you see bomb explosions, you see kidnapping, so many of these things coming left, right, and center. So the dynamics is changed, the landscape is changed, and basically the value system is equally changed. So that has turned the whole thing to a new ball game. And I pity the guys that are on the front burner now, because what we witnessed were conventional warfare, a little bit of prediction of likelihood of asymmetry. But now, all those conventional things is gone. You now have to learn guerrilla tactics, what is happening in the Northeast, learn asymmetry warfare, kidnapping is there, banditry is there. It's a different ball game. So a lot is changed.
From your vantage point, how would you describe the global outlook of the security?
Like I said, the global outlook is changed. It's changed. We started from a unipolar to a bipolar. Now you have a multilateral. I mean, there's so many middle powers of those days now that are coming as powers. And for me, with due respect, with the coming in of Donald Trump, the global politics is changed. I mean, you can see alignment and realignment left, right, and center. I mean, NATO is threatened as a body. So many other bodies that you expected will function, that people look at in the international system, they are crumbling. The UN in itself cannot really be seen as a UN that has, in those days, we used to say it's a toothless bulldog. Now, I'm afraid if the word bulldog could actually be used, because the power is eroded, and there's a lot of what I call transactional diplomacy at play. And that makes it difficult for us to know what is happening. Yeah, China is there on its side, Russia is there on another side, the NATO system is shaking. Coming to Africa, where we belong, you don't know if the AU is still in existence. How strong is the ECOWAS? We don't know. So that's a lot of interplay, and a lot is changed. I pity international relations students, because every day you keep reviewing things happening over and over again, and it's throwing up new challenges for the young students, or even for the young soldier to face. And in those days, you have rule-based system. You don't know if we're still in the rule-based order, where somebody can wake up one morning and say, look, I want to attack a country and nobody can stop me. So you now begin to ask yourself, where is the rule-based? What are the orders? So that is the situation we face now. So for somebody to sit down and say you want to predict what is happening, it's difficult. It's difficult because you don't know what you wake up to see tomorrow morning. We're still sitting on edge to see if the ceasefire in Iran will hold, if it will be broken or not. So it's a challenge. Donald Trump woke up one morning and threatened Nigeria and put us on high jump. And somebody will say, why would you meddle in another man's affair? So you realize that the international order that we spend time to study and read in the books, they're practically changing. That is becoming a different ballgame. So it's thrown so many things open.
And glad you mentioned Middle East. With the ongoing tension in the Middle East and other geopolitical flashpoint, what's your biggest concern of the situation as it's evolving?
Mm, My biggest concern is the what I call the economy, the power shift. In reality, there's power shift. We can't run away from it. And before now, we all depended on petroleum. And you can see with the Strait of Hormuz blocked, you can see the ripple effect, even on a pepper seller in my village. So that is the challenge. The fact that there's increase in commodities, increase in fare, the challenge of nations not being sure of where the next money will come
Very
from.
uncertain.
There's uncertainty everywhere. That aside, I mean, when the Russia-Ukraine started, we all know that Ukraine used to be one of the major grain supplies to this flank. With the Russia-Ukraine, you see the ripple effect on supply of that. Food system is affected. So with the Middle East problem, it just shows that what we have pretended does not exist. The reality is dawning on us. And what's the reality? The reality of the petrodollar. The reality of the fact that, look, without the petroleum system, we can't survive. And I tell people simply, thank God for Dangote. With every sense of humility. Without the Dangote refinery in Nigeria,
Wow.
I'm sure that we would have felt it to our bones.
Wow.
Because the challenge is not that the price of fuel is up, but the fact that they are available. Go to some of the West African nations. It's not just that the price is up, it's the availability. So that is the dynamics that have come into play. And all this affects the economy, the power of the money in your hand. And looking at our country as Nigeria being we're highly populated, but I tell people we're a youthful country. A youthful country with over 70% of our population being under 25, 30 years old.
True.
And most of them don't have definite job. Educational wise, that's problem. So meeting the challenges becomes a major issue for us. And that in itself is a security challenge, the economic security. So it has thrown up an economic challenge to the country, and not just to Nigeria, to every other part of the world.
Wow. So do you believe that the world is becoming more secure or just a bit more complex?
I think it would be foolhardy to say the world is getting more secured. It's getting more complex because the security challenges are no longer predictable. In those days, you can predict. Now you cannot predict. Anything can happen at any time. And I normally use this simple analogy. He said, a hungry man
Is an angry man.
angry man. When there's no food on the table, when people are not sure of where their next meal will come from, they can do and undo. And if you look at the Middle East, the seemingly secured states in the Middle East, Dubai, the Emirates, whatsoever, that seemingly look secured, for the first time they are getting threatened. And they now realize that, oh, it's not as it is. So it's complex. That's why you even look at it from that side. And to now imagine what technology has brought into the field. I mean, now you realize that with the technological know-how in terms of innovation, AI, and so many things, the threats are leaving the face of the physical to the cyber level. I mean, what do I mean? Somebody can sit down in his corner of his room and create
In
chaos.
toilet, in his toilet.
And anywhere, he can sit anywhere and cause trouble. So the emerging challenges are are kind of increasing and creating a complex situation for us to handle. And that in itself put us on the toes. And I say for every security or intelligence practitioners, it keeps you on your toes because you cannot predict what happens tomorrow. And because the whole system is fluid and dynamic. So,
Bringing it home,
yeah.
how would you assess the current security posture of Nigeria?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one because it's two-edged. The current security posture, I if I look at the posture, the way we pretend to be, I our security posture as it were is difficult to assess without being called a liar. And I'll say that with every sense of humility. You know, the indices do not match with what we are saying. I mean, well, if you play back some 5 years, you say, yes, there's improvement. And that's what the politicians will always tell you that, oh, when we took over, several states was inhabitable. Now states are being free. But you know, you look at what is happening in terms of security threats and challenges. Kidnapping is on the increase. And I tell you that when you look at the joint task force that involves the military and paramilitary, I tell you without missing words that practically all the 36 states of the country have joint military task force with the police standing to provide security. That was never so before. You have increased in kidnapping. I even hear that some family members can arrange, if they want to get daddy to do something and it's not forthcoming, they can arrange for kidnapping and get him to do that. We have the church system is failed. The religious bodies are not meeting up. At the same time, the traditional system is fading. So there are so many dimensions to it, and our military men could be saying we're trying when you say posture, but a lot still has to be done. That's like we say in the classroom, the room for improvement is still very large, very large. So I can't give us a pass mark for now. That's the truth.
Are security institutions overstretched, or is it just a matter of coordination and structure?
Yes, our security system are overstretched. And perhaps maybe this is where I'll do some breaking down. The military has its statutory roles, territorial defense of the territorial integrity of the country by land, by sea, and by air. That's where you have the armed forces. You have the police that are expected to handle internal security. That's what you call MACA, military aid to civil authority. When the police get overwhelmed in some areas, then you bring in the military to assist. And you have the paramilitaries left, right, and center. But in this instance, you have a situation where there's no clear delineation as to who does what. Practically, the military is all over the place. So rather than the defense of the territorial integrity, they have encroached into the internal security system. And that puts the police nowhere. So our military system overstretched, yes, one. Institution-wise overstretched, yes, two. Because when you don't know your job, every other job becomes your job. And that's what is happening now. I listened to a program on the telly, and a retired AIG was complaining about what the police has become. And for me, that was the reality of things. Because you realize that The police cannot be relied upon to do anything. And do you blame them? No. The basic training, the basic thing that should go into what the police should do, along the line we have lost it. And as it is now, it's what we call everybody come inside. It's job for everybody to do, and nobody is doing it. So, going back to your question, the military is overstretched. Our military institutions are overstretched, except to come back and now begin to carefully restructure and let people play their parts and do what they are expected to do in line with the Constitution.
With all these realities, where does the private security, or how does the private security fit into the national security framework?
Well, if you ask me sincerely, if there is the right time for the private security to come in, it's now. Honestly, in a country of over 220 million, still counting, we're not even sure if we are not more than that.
That's right.
In a country of over 220 million, look at the ratio of your military to the civilian. Look at the ratio of your police to the civilian. The last time I was told 1 to cover over 1,000. Who does that? So that is where the private security could actually come in. And what do they come in to do? Come in to complement the job of the professional, the conventional security. But the question is the private security industry prepared to do that? Like you alluded to the fact that when we first met, I reacted somehow about
I'm
private
still
security.
going to come back to you on that.
I reacted to that. Why? Because I wonder if the private security actually know what it's supposed to be doing, the private security industry. Because if they know what they should be doing, they should actually take the pressure off the police and the civil defense and complement their efforts. But before you can do that, you must first know who you are. What am I supposed to be doing? So if we sit down, look at the problem, identify the gaps carefully, then we know in this gap, which role can the police fill? Which role can private security fill? Then we'll be complementing one another. But as it were now, we're just unnecessary rivalry and what I tell people, money for the boys. My grounds with the private security stems from one simple fact. Every military person that retired wants to form private security. Once I am retired now, the next question is, when am I going to have my own private security outfit? Then I go to my village, I gather some boys that are not doing anything. I take them on Ipsobay. After 2-3 weeks, I give them uniform. And they will now go and become private security. We have glorified the God with due respect. So we need to, for the private security to play its key role and be relevant in the scheme of things. And I say it with every sense of humility. If there's a time we need the private security industry in our country, it is now, because the gaps are there and they can feel it on the land, marine, even cyber-wise. They can feel it effectively, but they need to sit down and do a proper thinking. What is the structure of the private security in Nigeria? What do we have on ground in the name of private security? I have quite a lot of friends that are in that industry, and they know my feel about them, because I believe that we can, apart from creating employment for our teeming youth, we can provide security that will take the burden off the conventional forces. But as it were, we're not doing that. So I push it to the private security industry practitioners. If they wake up and smell the coffee, the sky is just the beginning.
That's a good perspective. You know, I was gonna just say that law creates value. We have a 1986 Act, which is what we're riding on. And you and I know that the terrain of private security has changed to other definitions. You've rightly mentioned them. But as we are in this gathering today still, I would like to ask one question. Should private security remain a supportive system or evolve into a more strategic component of the national security, knowing that they can't give themselves the law, but the government needs to look at it? But I'll pass it on to you.
If you ask me, I would say that the private security should remain purely as a support system. You have the main enforcer of internal security. That is the police.
Sure.
That is their job. The military should come in as a support system in an internal security environment. That's why the Constitution and even in every military act put it clearly, marker, military aid to civil authority. You only invite the military when you get overwhelmed. But in this instance, those you are inviting to support you have taken the shine off. So what is caused that? That aside, the private security industry, which is the focus in itself, you said something about the act, and I think it's a problem with the country generally. We inherited what we call acts now as decree under the military regime.
Sure.
And with every sense of humility, perhaps because some of the practitioners could be intellectually lazy, instead of sitting down and reviewing this decree to meet the realities of our time, what do? We change the decree to act. You just change the body, act, but the content is still carrying the decree. And I believe that for every law or every regulation you make, you must look at your strategic environment. You must subject it to review from time to time. If you enacted a law in 1986, in the country we are today, 2026, and you are still carrying out that same law, hook, line, and sinker, of course. If you ask my daughter that you use your hand to do telephone. The question he asks you, Daddy, where does that come from? So events are changing, but we're not moving with the change. So what do I say about private security? Private security industry should restrict itself into support service system. And if they can effectively do that, you take the burden of civil defense, you take the burden of Nigerian police. And I tell you that the population of this country is large enough that can, in fact, the private security industry is not even enough. How many are there? The last time I traveled to a state in Southwest, the hotel I was staying, I saw some guys dressed in one uniform, and the guy stopped me at the gate and he held a scanner and he did like this. Meanwhile, the scanner I was holding was not even activated in any way. So by the time I passed him, I just stopped. I said, "Come here." I said, "What did you do with that thing?" He said, "I'm checking if you carry any metal." So and I said, "How do you operate it?" He said, "I don't know. They just gave me that when any visitor want to come, I should just do it like this."
Oh dear.
So you have a challenge of people that are not trained. You have a challenge of, and you can't give out what you don't have. Even to provide the support system, the private security industry as it were today, with every sense of humility, and I'm not throwing any stone, we're not prepared enough to do that. So we need to go back, sit down, reappraise the whole situation, and ask ourselves very realistic questions. Have we identified the gaps? How do we fill this gap? What and what do we need to do to fill the gap? We don't need to compete with civil defense. We don't need to compete with police or custom or anybody. We can complement their job in several sectors. In the maritime sector, the cyber industry is opening up, the space is opening up. A lot of yahoo going on left, right, and center. The police is not equipped to do that. With a properly trained private security outfit, that aspect can be nipped in the bud. So that's why I'm saying that if the private security industry in Nigeria limits itself to a support function and sit down to do a proper appraisal of the situation and can plug in, conduct a proper need assessment or gap analysis or whichever one, and see how we can fit in. Before you know why will a bank structure need police or civil defense to guide them if the private security system is well trained and equipped? So that's my outlook to it. I don't support them playing any other role apart from support system. But as it were currently, even that support system, they cannot effectively play. I hope they will forgive me.
From your experience, tell me, what does an effective security leadership look like?
That's loaded. Effective security leadership. Effective, for security leadership to be effective, you must be seen to be providing solution, because the essence of security is safety of life, property. And we talk about safety of personnel, safety of material, safety of property. Every security aims at providing that. So when you're not saying effective security leadership, is that we must be able to raise up men that can effectively play their role in such a way as to guarantee this security, as to guarantee this safety. That when you talk about, when you see a policeman at the scene of riot or any scene, your mind should be at peace that, oh, I don't need to be afraid. But that in itself is a different ballgame, because the trust is being eroded. That's a challenge of trust. That's a challenge of, the interpersonal relationship is no longer there. The civil populace don't trust the police. And not only the police, they don't even trust their military. And it trickles down. So when we talk about effective security leadership, leadership, you can't be a good leader if you don't have good followers. And the people you have in the leadership institute will tell you that there are indices of good leadership. Having a listening ear, being able to carry your people along, being able to communicate. But I tell you that there are various kinds of leadership these days. Like I said initially, Trump has told us that there could be transactional leadership. Apart from the normal conventional leadership style, we know the autocrats, the Democrats, and all those stuff. But when you are talking about security, the threats and the threat dimensions in our land and the current situation demands that you must, for you to be a successful leader in the security balance, you must be able to enjoy the confidence and the trust, not just of your followers, of the populace. When you come onto the air and you tell people that we are secured, people should be able to sleep with their eyes closed. But what do we hear? The police will tell you we are not going to, we will leave no stone unturned. And so many stones have been left unturned that now you don't even know the stones that are not turned. And so you now have so many buzzwords that people don't really have confidence in us. So what makes successful security leader a successful security leader is a man that will first know the people he's leading and will be able to relate with them, know their problem, and be able to tell them the truth. In this part of the world, we felt it's mature when I'm not capable, but I keep doing bravado. But for me, a good leader will let people know that these are my inadequacies, these are my shortcomings, and we're able to sit down and rationalize things. We have a lot of challenge with our our planning and analysis of things that, as it were, we don't even know our problem. And when you don't know the problem, it becomes difficult. In the military, I was taught that that's what we call estimate process. And that as a leader, the first thing is that you must be able to come up with your end state. Let your followers know that this is where we are going. This is my end state. And let them know what we need to do to get there. The ways, the means, and the ends. But we have thrown that away. So it's a different ball game. I don't know if I've answered your question, but it's a thought
So how should organizations begin to rethink protection from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, which I think is happening in the Western world, in this part of the world, is for us to begin to see security as everybody's duty. That's the first thing. I mean, before now, we just think that security is just it's an exclusive duty of somebody. But for me, as it were now, we need to identify and acknowledge the fact that security is everybody's responsibility. Like the police will tell you, if you see something, you say something. I see somebody doing something that will cause danger to me. Rather than me speaking, so long as I'm not involved, I keep quiet until it backfires. So, and I tell people that our environment has caused, has made it, or has encouraged the challenges we face. Let me give an example. Nigeria, you have two kinds of weather: harmattan and what?
Rainy season.
Rainy season. I left the house this morning with, I didn't see power from 8 o'clock till I left the house. I was on solar, and I've remained on solar. Now imagine I'm in a country where it is snow and there is no power. Of course, people would have died. So practically, in this part of the world, nature and the things that surround us have practically contributed to our laziness and the places we find ourselves. And that in itself has encroached into our security outlook to things. We just believe that if they are maiming, if they are raping, or if they are doing something untoward and you see it, what do? You turn your eyes so long as it does not affect me. I mean, sometimes you hear stories of people that were raped in buses, female people that were molested in buses, and so many things. And you ask that, could they have been alone? We kind of pretend to mind our business when we should be our neighbor's keeper. So for me, the reality and for us to wake up is to see security as everybody's business. If I see something going wrong, I need to take action. I mean, I tell people that you can contribute to making the road safe. If you see somebody driving one way, you should be able to stop the person. I mean, let me give you a good instance. I went to Ghana, and there's this normal road from Teshinungwa to main Ghana town by the coastside. That road is almost 10 kilometers. And you see 2 lanes from Teshi till you get to the main junction. 2 lanes, one coming, one going, no overtaking, no nothing. Of course, when I got there as a Nigerian, and I said, why could these people be this docile? I thought I was in a hurry. I tried to overtake. As soon as I pulled the car to overtake, the car just blocked me. Okay, go back. And you know what they said, Nigerian man, go back. I felt so ashamed of myself.
They knew you were Nigerian.
That, of course, I'm a Nigerian. And I said, oh, after that day, I spent over 11 to 12 months in Ghana. After that experience, I never tried it because the people check practices. In Nigeria, when you see somebody taking one way, the next thing before you know, everybody will join and start taking one way. So we don't see it as our concern. So if we wake up and start doing what is necessary, in the area of somebody falsifying figures and you raise it up in your office, in the area of somebody preparing fake drugs under bridge and you see them doing it and you send the alert, then people will walk. I know the next thing will be, what if you raise alarm and the police does not do anything? It gets to a point that when you start, I'm happy now that the era of social media is reporting so many people. You see somebody doing something, they snap it and post it on social media, and it's keeping us in check. So for me, I believe that the best way for us to reshape our security landscape minimally is for the individuals to take up the responsibility of being their brother's keeper. As a country, as a nation, how do we do? Is to sit down and look at the gamut of our security challenges. What are the causes of these challenges? I said something that a hungry man is an angry man. When the youth you have a young chap that borrowed money, the parents' toil, he went into the university, he read a good course, he's out, 3-4 years, he's not getting a job. And he sees one tout, one motopark guy that was saying up this party, up that party. The next time he becomes a local government chairman and he's throwing money left, right, and center. What example? So until we get our priorities right, I think over time the value system is eroded. So we need to sit down and ask ourselves, let's review our value system. Let's begin to play the roles. There was this program I loved when I was growing up. It was an NTA program by Franco Lizzie. When Franco Lizzie comes on there at 9 o'clock, the first question, he said, do you know where your children are? He asked that question jokingly. There are so many parents that don't know where their children are.
Oh, wow.
They don't know what their children are.
Oh, wow.
Doing. And you go under Obalende Bridge. I mean, drive from Chevron Junction to Admiralty. At every bus stop you stop, just look around. You see the crowd of young boys. Check their age limit. Between 10 to 20, 21. Doing nothing. That in itself is a recipe for disaster.
Wow.
So it's on, and I could go on and on and on. So the challenge is we need to sit down and begin to see how we can gainfully get these people busy, provide needed support for them, and let them be able to. We have a vocational center, we scrapped it all of a sudden. It's not everybody that can go to school. There are some that are good at handiwork. Why don't we get them employed? When the guy is busy, It's not thinking of threats. So it's governmental, individual, and family aspect. A lot is involved.
And still on the private security, what do we need to do to align with the global best practice?
To align with the global best practices, I used to, that's one, I'll say that you cannot give out what you don't have. Ignorance to me is a sin. For us to align with global best practice, the first thing is that we must get involved in training. You cannot downplay training, but you cannot train when you don't even know what you want to train for.
The standards.
So the first thing is, like I said, as private security industry, we need to look at our environment, Nigeria as it is. What should be our role? If we say we want to provide support, our role is support system. What nature of support system should we be providing? On land, maritime, air, VIP protection, bodyguard, banking institutions, monitoring, and all those things. What should we be doing? Then, when we say this is after identifying what we should do, then how do we go about it? That is where we can say, how is it done in the US? How is it done in the UK? How is it done in South Africa? How is it even done in Ghana? Then let's begin to sit down and bring the bodies of like minds together. Then we can now place laws and regulations that will be enforceable and that will be binding. Because another thing with Nigeria is that we are not short of laws, we are not short of rules, but how enforceable are they?
Implementation.
When somebody knows that if I come to the office and say, Oga, make we settle up, you understand? So, for us to really be comparable to global best practices in the private security industry, let's sit down. As many of us that are together now, let's come together and say, ladies and gentlemen, what is the gap? What are the needs? How do we fill this gap? What do we require to fill this gap? In what role? In what capacity? Then you now begin to train people and begin to employ people. I'm not, I can identify one or two private security industries that are trying to do that, so that you bring bodies of people together, let them be trained. I'll give you a common practice. In those days, every Saturday in Nigeria, especially in Lagos, there's one owambe, one wedding function or the other. And you see some of these boys that are broad-chested, bodyguard, they will lash themselves with, and they'll call gadgets. And most of those gadgets, they don't even know what it's meant for. Then I ask the question, do you regulate their practice? Do you have a data of private security operators in Nigeria? If we have the data, how effective are they? Do you have a regulatory body that sanctions for infractions? So there's a lot we can do to now say, okay, we want to compare ourselves to global, whatever. So the first thing first is, let's identify our need. How do we feel that need? Let's give ourselves rules, which I know exist in the act. But like you rightly alluded to, that act is obsolete. It's very, very obsolete. By now, we should have reviewed it to face emerging realities and now begin to see how you train. Then come up with conditions for people to meet before they can come into the field, so that it's not everybody come inside as you have now. I told you of the one I had when I traveled to somewhere. By the time I finished with the guy, of course, he was confused. So I now realized that even what he had on, the thing was not switched on. And by the time I opened it, I said, oh yeah, let me teach you how to. We tried to open it. There's no battery in it. There was no battery. But somebody gave it to him to be used.
So, sir, for organizations listening,
Yeah.
what should they prioritize when engaging a private security company?
Competence. Number one, competence. Because you can't buy it in the market. And competence talks about professional competence. I mean, if you come to me and say you want to provide security for me, and I ask you one or two basic questions about security, you can't answer me, then I have a challenge. I used to have an orderly that was not trained in weapon handling when he came to me and were to go out. And he asked for my pistol, and I told him, sorry, I can't give you. He said, why? I said, I've not seen you handle pistol. He said, sir, I know how to do it. I didn't say anything. Not to make him feel bad. When we came back, I removed the magazine and I told him, oh yeah, strip the pistol for me. His hand was shaking. He couldn't strip. So I now asked him, I said, oh, and you want me to give you a loaded weapon so that I'll become the first target? So that's why I tell people most of the time when they tell you accidental discharge,
Training.
is due to lack of competence, training, capacity building. So for those on the outside, if you want to, I tell people the first thing is approach the professionals. We still have professionals. There may be few. Look for competence. If somebody tells you, I can give you a new dress, look at the dress he's wearing. I mean, that's a literal adage in my place. So if the man says he can provide security for me, and I realize that he's not even secured himself, why would I? It's just like having a driver that does not know how to drive. So look for competence, number one. And number two, we need to begin to look for people that have the capacity to do what they claim they want to do. And that is where I think the private industry can help. You can come up with profiles of private industries. You can develop a magazine, create an avenue where you assess this company and you rate them. In the hotel industry, they do it. If I want to go into hotel, they rate 5-star, 4-star, 2-star. And when I get into a supposed 5-star and I'm getting a 2-star treatment, that's a feedback mechanism. So if the private industry comes up with an assessment platform that people can, I mean, I employ somebody today, but in my estate, I won't mention the name, so I not to put them into trouble. I like doing my work around the estate around 11:30 at night. Just maybe, and sometimes I'm passing through some key points, key positions, and you see the security man is asleep.
Tired.
Several occasions, I will take this, I will just pack everything and I'll take it and go and lock it in my boot. And in the morning, I'll call the supervisor. I say, come, where is this? You know, and then rather than people supporting my action, they see me and say, Kai, this man just likes wahala. So you realize that we should have a regulatory body that can put in check. So if I were to employ any, I want to be able to have a magazine, a platform I can see these are the names of private security industries in Nigeria that are reliable, that are vetted. And that makes it easy. Let me tell you, an hairdresser in Ghana, when you invite them to come and work in your house, they are careful because they are licensed. And they know if you quote their license and report them from non-performance, they will seize their license.
Oh,
So they can't misbehave. So
wow.
if we put that up, let the people have a platform for which they can engage the private security, and let them have a platform for which they can give a feedback. By so doing, we can regulate the body and we'll make it easy. But to go back to your question, please look for competence, look for people that are professionally sound, not in their outlook, but in performance, and be able to assess them and give a feedback.
And on the other hand,
Yes.
anyone who's trying to come into the private security sector, what should they focus on?
Like I said, focus on the gaps and focus on the need you can feel. There's no point in me being in a village in the north and I'm doing a private security that is maritime related. It serves no purpose. The first thing is look at your strategic environment. Look at the gaps within that area and see how you can complement the efforts of the conventional and the professional services. Once you can identify that gap, then it's easy to fit in. Once you do that, it's easy. Then that determines what to do. And in Nigeria these days, there's a lot of area you can focus on. Like I tell you, the cyber security space is a virgin, open, because AI has created a challenge. So that is untapped. The maritime world, I can tell you because that's my field. The maritime world, the Navy cannot cover all the space. So there are so many things the private security industry can do. We have a lot of ungoverned spaces that the private security can field. I mean, why would you go and look for police to be guiding banks? Why would you look
And
for
VIPs
police to be guiding VIP?
carrying their bags.
Carrying their bags. If the private security industry is well trained and you give them VIP protection training and bodyguard training, that is a job they can effectively do and take the burden off the police.
And lastly, this was not part of my question, but I just thought because it's you, I must ask.
Okay.
About arm bearing. Is Nigeria ready to carry arms?
Nigerians,
Yes.
it's a capital no, we are not ready. We are not. Do
Why
you know,
do you say so?
if you allow us to carry arms, when you wake up every morning in front of your road, you see 3-4 people that will be gone. Because we'll abuse it. Even in the US, that they are allowed to. We see what is happening with school shooting. Somebody will run, just wake up in the morning and wake up from the wrong side of the bed. And when the man is hungry, when the man does not have a roof over his head, when the man does not know where the next meal is coming, he does not have a picture of the future. Every successful man he sees on the road is a threat. So you have a situation where the man sees that man riding a car as the cause of his problem, and he will be his first target. And we have witnessed it in Nigeria, in Lagos, during the toll gate riot,
And SARS?
the EndSARS. We knew what happened to shops and shoplets that were looted. And you see, when you see anybody driving a car that you think it's not, you say, this is part of them, you attack him. So when you allow us to start carrying weapons, before you know what, if I don't like your face, I can just corner you. Then it will not become who knows how to use it best.
You see why I gave you that as a bonus question,
Thank
because
you.
the session is over. But I knew you had something to say on that. And thank you so much for
It's a pleasure.
this session. It's been wonderful having you. So much to think on. And I believe that the viewers also have learned so much, from you. And back to you. Security is no longer centralized. In fact, the effectiveness of security depends on how well it is being understood and applied. So thank you for joining us today on PS Corner. See you on the next one. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like and share all our content. Thank you so much.
Thank you.